record this. I just hope that my computer don't crash. It's filled with nonsense, so I have very little space. And Zoom takes up so much space. I'll be recording on Zoom. Okay, so just have a look around. The first part is really to help you to do your preliminary literature review, and then there is a second. Then you move on to the second section where you address, establish a niche or gap. They call it establish a niche or gap, but basically this is your problem statement, trying to find out what your problem statement is. And basically there are 4 different types of problem statement, right? Whether there's a gap on previous research, you're making a counterclaim, or you're raising a question about a previous research, or you're actually expanding or continuing a tradition of investigation. So in each of these types of problem statement, then there are specific ways to write about it. Maybe this could give you an idea how you can structure your sentence so that it becomes clear how that this is a problem you're trying to address. So as previously, I don't emphasize this enough, that the difference between a problem statement and a thesis is that a thesis is your assertion, it's your argument. When it's a problem statement, you need to highlight how it is a problem. Okay, so when you say something is a problem versus something is an argument, they sound very different, right, as a sentence. So you need to first identify the problem before you make certain assertions that becomes your argument, the argument of your sort of research. So in order to do that, the specific ways you should write how you should sort of like frame your problem statement, using words like, this view has been recently challenged by, will give the reader an idea that, okay, you're making certain, you're responding to previous arguments by saying that there's another way to look at these things. So, so once you've established your problem statement, then you can then move on to the third section, which is presenting a thesis statement. And this is more assertive, as you can tell by the tone of the sentence. Hopefully, this will give you an idea. It's a very easy to follow sort of like exercise as well, where you try to see if you can write your preliminary sort of like, scoping, identifying of the sort of like field or topic, your development of a problem statement, as well as your assertion of a thesis argument in 3 sentences. So you can try and do this at your own pace, but maybe because some students always sort of like come back and ask, you're still not clear what is the difference between a problem statement, a thesis, as well as a topic. So hopefully this will give you a clearer idea if you were to sort of like think of it in terms of how you can write any one of these 3 important components of your proposal, so that your proposal is clear. It's clear what you want to sort of like research on, what you're trying to address in recent scholarship, and also what the argument is that you're trying to make. All right. So have a go and see. Let me know if this actually works. I've been sort of like going online and finding different things to share with different people. So this is also an attempt to consolidate some of this material that I find perhaps more useful for me. But I like to hear what you think. Okay. So you can actually sort of like go through this at your own pace. I don't want to sort of like keep repeating this over and over again, because this is actually just part of the methodologies class. But if you have any further questions, you can ask me now, or we can discuss this. Beyond this is really different sort of like section. So they concern with different aspects of writing. We don't have to go through it linearly, and I want to get a sense of what your main sort of like concerns or interests are, so we can just sort of like zoom in on that and focus on discussing whether you have trouble writing theory, or if it's more about sort of like, trying to sort of identify what is the structure of the opening of, say, your research. Or we can look at different types of opening. We can also look at the content structure and discuss about the content structure. And we can look at different ways in which you can narrate and tell stories, and what is the value of using storytelling as a means to invite the reader to understand your topic a bit better. And finally, we can also talk about the abstract. These are things that I've identified, and if you have a further, any additional stuff that you want to address, we can also sort of like talk about them. But are there any, anyone has any burning questions first? Anything you want to sort of like talk about with the class? That maybe something that you're struggling with or working through that perhaps we can really help you to, overcome by having a discussion.
Maybe I can ask something about, you said chronological linear timeline of writing. If, for example, in chapter 1, I talk about the late 1800s, and then later on to chapter 2, I want to talk about the period coming after that. But then maybe in a subtitle under a subsection, and then I want to talk about back to the late 1800s. Then that means the timeline like jumps here and there, and then would that be like confusing?
Is there a reason for that?
I haven't gotten into it, but I feel it's very probable that that I'll bump into this.
You will what? Sorry, yeah. I didn't quite hear.
That I will face something like that.
It depends on how you structure your topics, right? And if so happen that maybe the way you structure your topics or chapters, I mean, I don't know what's your chapter, but let's say that chapter makes sense, like the sequence. And so happen how you structure your chapters will make you jump in terms of timeline. So
you start with what? Okay. Chapter 1. What is chapter 1? Chapter 1 is your intro, right? Okay. Chapter 2?
Yeah. Wait, let me open that. Chapter 2, I put the literature review. So I see it as like actually release, like the sort of thesis actually begins in chapter 3.
Okay.
Where I think I'll talk about like the beginnings, as in the museum's early days, how it's founded and things like that.
Okay.
And then subsequently chapter 4, I want to talk about the Selangor Museum's involvement in the Empire exhibition.
Selangor Museum's involvement in the entire exhibition. What do you mean?
In the Empire exhibition.
In the Empire.
Empire.
Okay. And
then chapter 5, it's more about the museum's like visitor kind of journal of visit. How do you put it? Like visitor study kind of the museum. So it's more like the community's memory. More like how do I say? I want to focus on like the visitors in chapter 5.
Okay. Okay. Then, and that's it, right? And then what? Chapter 6 is conclusion. Is that right? Oh, did he hang?
Yeah, I think so. Bye, Dennis.
Dennis, unbrace yourself.
It's not moving.
Oh, internet in Subang must
Macam
be
real.
a bit slow.
Okay.
Oh, bye bye.
Oh no, he's gone.
Oh, 回来了。
Okay.
Hello, I'm back.
So, Dennis, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Is this roughly your structure?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay. So can you maybe tell us what is the main sort of like challenge you face? You said that you will be retracting back to the 19th century in chapter 5.
Because I think what I'm thinking is like,
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak louder?
hello,
Hello?
hello,
Hello?
hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So in chapter 3, let's say in chapter 3 until chapter 4, I sort of it's more like chronological. And then in chapter 5, and then I go back again to like 1800s,
But it
late
spans
1800s.
across like a longer period, a long time, a time frame that is much wider, right? We're looking at museum visitorship from early days all the way to the 1940s. Am I right?
Yeah. So that means I should treat like chapter 5. I mean, that means I'll be going back, like sort of backtrack again, and then in chapter 5 lah.
I have specific suggestions, but I don't know if maybe others want to
Yeah.
suggest or share your thoughts first. What do you think of the structure? Is it okay? Is it weird to sort of like move back in time?
Dennis, can you roughly say your problem statement for our, just so we remember?
Dennis, do you have a problem statement? I don't know. I think your time is like we didn't really work on those.
I think it wasn't that strong.
Then thesis statement maybe.
Belong to the time where we didn't have that kind of emphasis.
Oh, I see.
I didn't have that kind of emphasis.
Actually, what's this Empire exhibition? Actually, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's this? Just one sentence. What is Empire exhibition? I'm Googling.
And
It was in
also,
web.
what's your general topic?
The general topic is that the writing of museum history is always very like from the state, like we focus a lot on the states, give a lot of importance in to how museums have a stately role, but then in doing that we sort of don't focus much on how the museums sorry, it shows that I don't really have a strong one.
No, it's okay. I think it's okay to talk about it. It makes things better also for you. It's
Was the Empire exhibition, was this exhibition held in Crystal Palace?
that one's different. That one is 18 something.
Oh, okay.
That one, late 19th century,
Oh,
Crystal
okay.
Palace.
Sorry.
That's the World
This
Expo.
one is in the Wembley Park.
Oh, okay.
So are you talking
Yeah.
about colonialism, influence of colonialism in our early museum, something like that? Because I suppose Empire Exhibition is all about colonial, right? I don't know.
Maybe I think in that part I also want to talk about, like, maybe I'm just want to talk about so many things but don't really have a focus. I think there's also a Malaya Borneo exhibition that I feel could be like placed in here
Why?
because
Malaya Borneo.
I think one of the aims of my thesis is that I want to explore like the links between the museum in the region. That, yeah.
Okay, but what is
Because,
the
Why are we going to the UK again? Like, why is your thesis go? I thought you said links in Malaya, right?
Oh, how did Selangor Museum participate? Did they send artifacts to
Oh yeah.
UK?
I haven't. I think yes, but I haven't found like the materials yet.
See.
I think what we're trying to understand is why you include Selangor Museum in the Empire Exhibition. Why is this an important starting point from your thesis? And
Middle point. It's not the starting, I think.
okay, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, the early days. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why is this important? Because it's in there and it's one chapter.
A whole
Wait.
event.
Because I think it's an important event because the museum is part of, because they want to showcase. I think it's like a highlight event that the museum has had been involved in. So I think it should be important at least to talk about it.
Why that
Is it-
event? Why not other events?
Is it the first one that
Yeah.
Malaysia participate internationally?
I don't think it's the first.
So why that event? Because like the other parts of your essay is chronological and then you stop in time for that particular moment and then you go into the visitors. I don't know.
Yes.
You're bringing us around the world. I was just wondering why.
But the museum's early days is in Malaysian context only, right?
I assume that I don't know.
I don't know.
Dennis, is it?
Yeah. The
I
Selangor Museum's
see.
founding lah.
then maybe
Also, the museum's early days is only on Selangor Museum. It's not about general museums in Malaysia.
Not a general, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's a Selangor Museum's early days, I think. So it's not general museum.
Yeah.
then if you want to try this method, in one sentence, identify what your topic is, and then one sentence identify what your problem statement is, and one sentence identify what your thesis is, or what is the argument you're trying to make. Main argument.
I think can you give me some time to get back to this so that we can save some time? So
I'm also curious, like, why did you pick, for example, the by exhibition as this sort of like this event that you want to talk about the Selangor Museum, if you haven't done the background reading on whether Selangor Museum actually contributed to the Empire Exhibition or not? You said you haven't found any evidences.
I can't remember.
But actually, it's very easy. Like, you just type Selangor Museum Empire Exhibition. All the documents are. It's on Google. You just have to do the preliminary research. And they are like documents pointing to what Selangor Museum contributed to. to the Empire exhibition.
Or can Dennis just write about the Empire exhibition, then cut out the Selangor part?
I don't think that's his interest.
Oh, I see.
I mean, his topic is on the Selangor Museum, it's not on the Empire exhibition, unless you are changing your topic entirely.
I don't think I want to change my topic.
Okay. You know how you can do it is not think of it. I mean, for me, what is obvious is maybe you don't think of it as chronological. So, you know, from visitorship, you're going to sort of like look at visitorship across different stands of time. Then the other one is then when you look at Selangor Museum in the Empire exhibition, maybe you don't only have to, as you have suggested, you don't only have to focus on the Empire exhibition. Maybe Selangor Museum's role, the role that Selangor Museum play when it participates in all these world expositions, right? So you can also track like Selangor Museum's participation across in world expos across, you know, a span of time as well. It doesn't need to
be an Empire exhibition, right?
Yeah, fixated with the Empire exhibition, and Empire exhibition might be the main you know, case study, but it doesn't have to exclusively be the only one. And as a result, then the entire chapter is more broadly thematic and less so focused on addressing, you know, Selangor Museum's, you know, activities in one specific, you know, historical event. So the thematic could be really the role of, you know, world expos and how museum participates in these kinds of like networks of displays, exchange, you know, promotion of sort of like trade and industry, as well as knowledge production. I don't know, something like that. Then it becomes a thematic chapter. And then chapter 3, rather than sort of like frame it as early days, then it's to think of the founding ideology. Then that chapter would yes, sure, it will contain sort of like information about the museum's early history, but more than that, you're using that to analyze and trying to understand the sort of motivations that resulted in, say, the founding of colonial museums in the 19th century.
So it's not like about the Selangor Museum, but it's more like
no, it's about it's still about the Selangor Museum, but Selangor Museum, you know, you're talking about Selangor Museum, but you're also sort of like connecting the history of Selangor Museum to specific issues that you want to address, and it's not just a straightforward, say, chronological history of, you know, so and so, this and this happened in Selangor Museum, but okay, if this and this happened, and you know, it says something interesting about, you know, maybe the ideology of colonial museums in the 19th century, as well as if it participates in an Empire exhibition, then it also says something about, you know, Selangor Museum being part of a larger node, right, of exchange of, you know, knowledge across this imperial sort of like network. If it's about sort of like visitorship, then it's about the kind of like specific types of perspective that can be gained by looking closely at the voices and the meaning-making processes of people who come and visit exhibits in the Selangor Museum, and what they gain from what they gain from looking at the engaging with the display might be very different from what the curators intended those displays to mean to, right? So those, I think you can sort of like make it thematic. So rather than worry too much about, you know, a very neat chronology, you can loosen your chronology a bit. so that it doesn't become so burdened by, need to fit everything into one section, but maybe, it can sort of, you can sort of like spread out all the historical information you have and rearrange it so that you classify them according to themes that you want to address. That's one approach. I'm not saying that this is the only one, but I'm saying that's one way you can do this. I don't know if other people have, others will have, different ways you can think of, massaging the information or the sources and how you can try to tell the story. Anyone else wants to share? I don't know. What do you think, Dennis?
I think it's a doable idea lah. Yeah, I'm not sure how this might be, but I actually, a while back I wrote something about what I like to talk about. Actually, sort of the thesis is, I think, how in the local context we adapt museology that is from the West. So it's like how because it's transplanted from the West, and it's not like directly the same copy of what is being done in the West, right? So I think my thesis could be that we want to look at how the locals adapted that museum model from the West into.
But when you're asking how, that's a question. That's not a thesis. You're not telling us what is your assertion. What is the argument that you're making? Saying how is saying that, okay, you want to explore this question. It's a question. You haven't actually say how. What is this work of adapting? So what is the assertion that you're trying to make?
I know I've said a lot of times that the assertion is that that the writing of museum history is, I mean, we always think that museum history is the role of museum is always top down, but there is also a bottom up kind of history lah. So I think that is the assertion, and that since it's bottom up, then the focus would be the community, and then
who are the communities? I think this has been asked many times previously.
Yeah.
You haven't spelled out who the communities are that you want to research on. So it's still very vague, and I wonder if maybe you can, have you given much thought about these things?
I did want to say about it's definitely one of it would be the visitors, and secondly the source communities lah. But of course the community would also include the staff and also the administrative people.
Mm-hmm. And what do you want to say about their history? If you're talking about bottom-up history, a history that comes from their perspective, what do you hope to gain? So maybe your assertion is a bit general. So let's take for granted that, it's not a new methodology, it's not a new approach. Given that other people have, used bottom-up kind of approach to history to explore you know, an alternative sort of like perspective. What is this perspective that we can gain then? I think that is, if you can answer that, then that is your assertion. That is your thesis. So try and see if try and see if you can do the exercise over here when you have the time, and see if it actually helps you clarify what your thesis is. Okay. I don't know. I mean, is it still vague? Like the level of detail that maybe you need to specify, or
it definitely is because I can't really answer it.
okay. No, is it vague in the sense that you are we being sort of like vague, or do you feel like, or it's vague because you cannot answer it, but you haven't actually sort of like thought extensively about it?
I haven't thought extensively, and I feel like I know I want to study about sort of the bottom up kind of thing, but then it's weak lah. It's like nothing lah. So it's like so.
Well, why don't those of you, I mean, many of you who are doing sort of like bottom-up approaches or trying to recover local voices, or perspectives that are non-governmental or non-official. You want to sort of like those of maybe use Ra. I can think of Clarissa. You've just passed your presentation. Do you want to talk a bit about how you have approached your thesis section, and what is enough for a thesis?
I'm sorry for taking like your time.
No. It's a good thing to.
Don't apologize.
Yeah, walk through.
Question. Can I? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, because when you mentioned Selangor Museum is actually before 1963, right?
No.
So if so for your scope, I mean, Denise, when like
somewhere like 1945 lah, until there.
1945 until 1963.
No, 1945. 1887 until 1945.
I guess, I mean, my question is more on like when I saw the visitor to the Selangor Museum, I just wonder how would you assess to them? I mean, like, because they are most likely are dead right now, right? And whether it's through archival materials or something. That was my curiosity lah, because I was just wondering also to friends here, like if some community that is like before 1960 or something, they might be dead right now. So yeah, what's your approach for this one?
Yeah, thank you for that. I was actually also asked this question in the PD. Yeah, so okay, Simon had also like helped me in this, where he sent me a few links on like where like previous visitors' memoirs or journals about the museum, and also like the official reports from the museum lah. So I think mainly is this two lah, and newspapers lah. Yeah, I guess most of it is this.
Principally, there are two main sources. One are personal accounts, so they take the form of memoirs, or they will be recorded in letters to newspapers, or or written in diaries, or in poems like shairs and things like that, right? Commemorative sort of like literature and all that. And then there's the official documents, and these are the reports by the museum. So when you want statistics, the government actually publish an annual report, and they do the breakdown of, you know, visitorship according to races, but also like, you know, who are the officers that are appointed to whichever position. And from there, if you were to piece together and synthesize all the information, you should be able to analyze. You should be able to analyze that data and say something interesting about, yeah, not just not just a numerical figure, but also very often connected to those data. The government official writing report will also make his own observation. And from those little bits of information, you are able to, I guess, piece together some general idea of what the visitorship was like. But you need to, I think it's important to at least sort of like make sure that it's complemented by those personal narratives. Then you have the numerical data as well as the individual voice that gives you the very subjective view and perspective.
Thank you.
Clarice, you want to share more a bit about how you have approached trying to capture this maybe a bottom-up kind of perspective? How much do you need? How much of your cards do you need to sort of like lay out on the table? For your thesis statement or your argument?
I think for my argument, I developed this discussion that there are two sides, and that what my two sides of the coin, like this idea of like the top down. I'm discussing my. Should I go with my title first? My title is on cultural collectives in Malaysia from 2010 to present, an era for collective creativity. So I'm looking at kind of creative collectives, art and cultural collectives, what I call, which is different from what I was doing for my report, for my research before, which is called creative hubs. And I kind of situate that these practices are somewhere in between kind of top-down funding policies and ideas of what creativity is, and then they have their own kind of existing network. So that was, and then my thesis statement is asserting that there are differing definitions of creativity, and how art and cultural collectives are situated in between these two systems of kind of support and things like that. And how do they kind of define their own practices as well? So yeah, that was my laying out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for them?
Can't hear you, Simon.
Do you have any suggestions for Dennis on how you think he can better clarify this?
I think I don't know what the scenario is, to put it simply, like in your situation, like why the Selangor Museum, who the community is, who, like what Simon said before, but like I'm also interested to know like what's happening during that era, like what are the things that you're most interested in tackling, and who are the main stakeholders within this whole ecosystem of museum making and museumology. Yeah. So there's like the like who makes the choices of the artifacts that are housed in these spaces, things like that. But what would be helpful is to situate what are you testing? What is your like statement that you want to test? So my statement I'm interested in testing is like the differing definitions of creativity, and then what can like art and cultural collectives offer being situated in between the two, right? So what is it that you are testing about the museum and that should be easily said in like one sentence or two, if that makes sense.
Okay.
He might have hanged again.
Really?
He looks very serious.
Um, So Subang's Sunways, internet is not very good.
Yeah, lol, I thought it's like the new city and all that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
The internet is
okay.
really bad.
How come?
Not
Sad,
sure.
man.
I'm afraid you might have to repeat yourself.
That's okay. Which part did you hear, Dennis?
Can't remember. I think, yeah. You said the context, is it? The context of.
Yeah, like the scenario. I think what I'm interested to hear is like, who are the stakeholders? Who are the people involved in your...
I think maybe the starting point that is worth exploring or discussing is that it was about the time where KL really sort of boomed, I think.
Then why
Uh,
does the museum... What's the museum got to do with that?
Yeah.
yeah, that's sort of like, I want to know why also lah, because that, like, the resident general already gave a comment that what is the need of the museum being there when there's already one that is in Taiping. And I guess that has got to do with like urban planning lah, or like,
Don't expand your topic right just yet.
no, I mean like part of like building a city, or I actually also see the museum as like a clubhouse.
Is it?
I
So I
I
think
What?
mean, at least in the beginning lah.
Yeah, Simon?
yeah.
And then it became like bigger until it's adopted as the state museum.
Okay. So that's why you are interested in the Selangor Museum.
No, 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 no.
Then
One
you
of the
have to
things that
tell
I'm
us.
interested to find out, but I
Okay.
don't think it's the general. I don't think it's substantial enough for the to be a problem statement or thesis statement.
Then why did you just tell us?
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I just find it interesting.
I think we have to start being interested in the topic and not being interested in KL history and trying to write KL history through the museum. You need to be genuinely interested in the museum. It always seems like you're skirting around the museum because ultimately the main thing that's driving your curiosity is your interest in KL history. Right? So how do you shift
Yeah, understand what you mean.
and yeah, but I'm not saying that we cannot be interested in KL history. I'm saying that how do you make Selangor Museum as equally as interesting as KL history, as something that you want to really figure out. Rather than just, this is really just a site where people in KL, I'm able to tell the history of KL through this group of people who come together and form a little community club. Maybe that's an important aspect of it, but then you need to I guess you just need to sort of like shift the perspective a bit, so that it becomes clear, like, the main thing that you want to sort of like figure out is this Selangor Museum.
I think that you mentioned the club many times. I was just wondering, why is it like not a chapter, or like the social life of the museum is also not one of your chapter titles?
Oh yeah.
So rather than early museums, early days, couldn't it be like social life around museum or something? Or,
Social life
or
around museum.
communities of communities making Selangor Museum, communities that make Selangor Museum, something, I don't know. Yeah.
Will they be the patron? I mean, Dennis,
Would they be?
just wonder, patron. Yeah, maybe. I don't know how it works, but yeah.
I mean, there were patrons lah, but
The one that hang out at the clubs. I don't know.
they donate things lor. I don't think they play a big role, but I think they just donate, and it's more for their own public image.
It might be useful to also describe all of these different people involved as part of your thesis statement to articulate, maybe to foreground the Selangor Museum within, I don't know, being the state museum or something like that. I mean, yeah, to kind of describe the story of the state. Or, I don't know exactly what the ideas are, but it's important to discuss those who are tied to making the museum happen, if that's what you're also interested in, like the importance of it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to ask, or what's so? Because it's also hard to sort of like, you know, to know whether it's helpful for you or not.
I don't know, but I think it also helps if you do subchapters. I think just force yourself, like, you know, don't think about the whole, what you're going to write. You know, don't think about the, how to say, like the details. I mean, but if you can do chapters and subchapters,
Do you have examples?
that would you know, that would really help. You just have to.
I think I took this from Eugene's thesis, where he, you know, created subchapters. But then if you will look at the two examples that I have here as well, I think there are subchapters in that. So you can, you know, refer to these if you're not so you're not clear as to how to sort of create subchapters. Maybe Yusra, do you want to share how you've done your subchapter? You probably have already started working on it, right?
Yeah.
You want to share your screen?
Okay. To share. Just a second.
Oh, there are new people who just joined us. Okay, hi Sharon. So primarily, we're just using the screen, and we're working off, not really working off, referring to some materials that I pasted on the Miro board as well. So you can also have a look at that. I've just shared the link in the chat box, okay?
Okay, how I started. Yeah, I mean, like, let's say the
You have any?
guideline thing, right? Okay, if we go chapters straight away, but of course these chapters are all based on my literature review, I suppose, from my thesis presentation. Like, can you all see this?
I think it's too tiny.
Too tiny.
Okay, this is a timeline kind of.
Timeline, but with the chapters.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, since we're talking about chapters. Sorry, it's a very slow. So is it too small still?
Yeah, can you make it full screen a bit? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
You can
Let
see.
me.
Squint a bit.
Yeah, maybe to 150,
Okay.
120.
Something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So obviously this one is we say like that. That's basic. The first part here is your proposal defense lah, your intro, right? This is the dissertation proposal. Okay. Sorry, your thesis proposal. So these are my topics. So let's say the first topic I'm looking at the history ethnographic of Bajau lands. So here, so what do I want to look in that? So I want to look at the history and also how it has transformed over the years from 1900 to like 2020, for instance. So and maybe meaning of patterns. I mean, I just throw in that. I don't know I'm going to get this information. If I don't get, I mean, the chapters or the subchapters will change, as we go along. Never be fixed, right? Then my next interest is, the functions and the specific usage of maths, because the maths apparently they are used differently for different ceremonies, for different types of different ceremonies. So yeah, so first like highlighting, finding out like what are the celebrations the Bajau Laut practice that uses the maths, and which one are the rituals and blah blah blah. And then there's next, actually there's quite a lot of chapter 4, right? So the next chapter is basically the process of mat, not process, approaches to mat weaving. So there's actually 2 types, either via traditional way where, so the traditional way you find like, how to prepare the raw materials, the weaving techniques. And my research has involved 2 groups, one in Pulau Madal, one in Pulau Banggi. So there'll be a comparison between the 2 groups of people, right? And for the Banggi and both also Omada, they have role of institutions and collaborative partners. So meaning like Prof. Tangan has injected certain workshops, giving some trainings to them, and so recently Ilan with the Omada weavers, kind of exhibiting the Tika, kind of internationally now. So that's kind of under one topic. And, so they're looking at what are the benefits and consequences of, of the traditional, that is kind of one topic. Math as part of the community, traditional, and role of institutions. So, I mean, I set that out as a starting point. I haven't collected data yet, so I'm still at proposal defense, right? So that's kind of how I structure it. So it's basically based on all my literature review and how I frame my research. Yeah. So my literature review is, or my whatever findings in the beginning, I find is various. It's from articles, it's from online ethnographic collection, it's from Facebook, Instagram, because there's not much on Bajau Map. So I follow these people on Instagram and Facebook and find out like Kaftangan. You can't find anything about Kaftangan. So even if you write to them, I don't know when. I mean, I wrote to them, they haven't gotten back to me. So, so it's basically to Facebook and Instagram, finding out the kind of the current situation. Is it? How do you say? What's the word? The current. What is the current state of the Bajau Laut map?
So that means in your literature review, did you talk about the aspects highlighted in green?
Aspects highlighted in what? Sorry?
Green.
3?
Green, hijau. So like, you see
hijau. In hijau. I touch a bit because I don't know. There's not much written, so I only write what I know. That would be another. That will be because my literature review, for instance, like I had 9 chapters. So whatever that I found, the status.
How did you arrive at this chapter headings?
How did I arrive to this?
At this chapter headings. How do you know that you want to talk about historical and then how do you know that?
Okay, so I will have to. Okay, I have to share you. My mapping.
your research question, right? That will come from your research question, right?
Yeah, all came from research. So my research, my problem statement answers to my research question. My research objective answers my research problem statement. Wait now. Maybe I should show you that. Wait now. Hold on.
So now I for those who have been doing the methodologies class more recently, we've been emphasizing on the recursivity of needing to sort of like make sure that whatever topics that you're exploring, it should align with the research, with the problem statement, the sort of like the thesis statement, as well as the research questions. That means it's a process where you keep going back and forth, and making sure that the entire arguments align, rather than risk, going off tangent.
Okay, so for instance, how did I arrive to that? Huh? So you look at this. You can see now.
Close the thumbnail.
What thumbnail?
To
Drag the side, the left side.
Okay, full scale like this. Okay. So this is my kind of, I pecahkan lah my problem statement. My problem statement then leads to my research objectives, which my research question is based on my research objectives. And for my research objectives, I get my chapter outline. Yeah. So it's important. I think you need to, maybe, I don't know, go back and look at your problem statement, research objectives. And your chapter outline should be, I mean, it depends. Not everyone's chapter outline is, I don't know, Simon.
It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be actually.
I mean, if you're lazy, or if you want if you want a more systematic way to sort of like present your research, we normally recommend students to just connect the chapters to the research objectives now.
But not necessarily.
Then it's systematic, right? It's clearer what you need to address. If you find it difficult tracking, the argument. But I think you need to figure out your problem statement.
And your objectives.
Yeah. And that's the hardest.
I think for mine, like each of the chapters would touch on all three of my research objectives, because my research objectives is more about like defining, and then each one will have their own kind of definition or understanding of creativity, and of course of like the governmental funding distribution, and then how they situate their practice. So through my like case studies, that's how I would unpack the research objectives. So maybe that can also be like a different way to think about how to answer your research objective.
Is it clearer now, Dennis? Or what do you think? Or is it still confusing? It's okay, you can be honest.
I feel like whatever that I had thought before that's like seemingly all right already, and then after discussing again, and then it becomes a problem again.
It becomes a problem. You mean like it becomes unclear? Yeah, or it's not as clear as you thought it is? It's not as clear as you thought it's,
yeah.
How you imagine it to be, is it?
Yeah. Okay. And I don't think maybe I'm not confident about my thesis statement. If even I have one.
Okay.
If there's one.
How you can be, maybe one way to be clearer is I think you have to start doing the explanation work, right? Of the terms that you use. So try to pass them. When you use words like community, who are the communities? When you start to actually identify these things and be specific about what you mean when you say use the word like community, what you mean when you use the word bottom up, and not take it for granted that it's a concept that everyone understands or that everyone knows what you're talking about. That's when you actually, start to not actually understand the concept, but actually learn to find a way to discuss those concepts using your own words. And I think that's important because what you need to show is your understanding of those terms. Because ultimately you will be asked, right? As you have been asked in your presentation, what is the community you're referring to? And whenever these things are asked to you, sometimes you stumble because maybe you haven't thought as extensively as we would like. Why you sort of like chose to frame your research in the terms that you have used. So you need to start thinking about those terms and start to sort of like explain to yourself in your own head and start to justify why you sort of choose specific readings or specific sort of like theory or framework or approach. And I think once you sort of like, to work through those things, then you will at least cover all the grounds, right? And that will have also pushed you, that would have given you also a research direction, because that's when you sort of like, oh, okay, if I need to sort of like understand what visitorship is, what do I need to sort of like read in order to sort of like figure out what visitorship means in this sort of context, what counts as visitorship, what kind of evidences or sources that I need to assemble together or to go through, just to give me a general idea of, what is the thing that I want to answer in my research. So those things can help you to actually start to clarify what are the main topics of your research already.
I think I need to talk about the research components through using the museum as a case study, but not talk about the museum itself. Do you know what I mean?
I think we can talk about the museum. That's.
I mean, like sort of like the perspective of it, because like how I initially intended is, I just want to tell the story of the museum. But
which I think is the key too, which I think it's fine. And if that's what you want to do, I think stick to that. Don't because if you're trying to do it too many different things, then it becomes a bit of a Frankenstein, right, at the end. Because if that's your motivation, then stick to it, but be clear and be consistent because and to make sure that that is the overriding aim of your thesis. And you always have to sort of like what Yusra said, go back and check and see if you're actually answering or addressing your problem statement and your thesis argument as well as your research questions or not. I don't know.
Okay, I'll give it some thought.
Yeah, I don't think you should worry too much if that's the main thing that you want to work on. If you want to focus solely on telling the story of Selangor Museum, by all means, go ahead. You don't have to make it a highly theoretical paper. But if you don't put in theory, then you better put in historical facts and tell us the story about Selangor Museum and be very specific about, you should be able to identify the communities. You should be able to tell you should be able to tell us about the statistics, the visitors, and give us the sort of like hard evidences that actually makes the story of Selangor Museum fascinating and interesting. So without the sexy theory, then it's the story that's going to be driving your narrative and your research. So give us that. Don't hold back and then say you're going to do it one day, because that day is never going to come. You have to start laying. The more cards you're able to lay down, the more things that you can actually sort of like explore later on.
All right. Thank you everyone for this session.
Anyone has anything you want to share or add, or questions you want to ask? Do you find writing easy or challenging in this, during the lockdown? Has it been easy to write, or has it been more difficult, or it doesn't really matter because this is the only reality that we all know for the past 1 year?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter.
It's fair lah. It's fair na. Fair and square.
It's what? Fair.
Pain. I think.
It's a lightly fair lah. Fair.
I think what could be helpful for this is that if we were to look at an article together or write together and then kind of share what we write, maybe a bit more specifically.
Right?
Yeah, like for this seminar
Mm-hmm.
thing, like to look at a piece of writing together and break down what we found compelling or what we found to be confusing within that piece, and then, or if we were to like even write in response to like a writing exercise, would also be good too, rather than talking about writing.
Okay. So
although talking is very useful too.
What do you prefer to do? Do you want to read something or do you want to write?
What do the others think?
Yeah, I think we can look at how to write by writing together. Yeah, you're right.
Do you want to read? Do you want to read like a thesis and then let's break down the thesis together, or do you want to actually sort of like try a writing exercise where maybe we can do that? We can do that the CAS exercise, right?
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Or do you want to sort of like explore different types of like opening strategies?
For me, like start writing together and see how we can write around like maybe a certain topic, how we can enter it, and how to kind of describe it or break it down differently or something like that.
Okay. So like an imaginary exercise where we all sort of like work on a specific topic. Okay.
I don't know what the others think as well, so feel free to chime in.
I got request actually, but it's got nothing to do with the writing. If you guys don't mind.
Sorry.
I got some requests actually. If you guys don't mind.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Maybe I might want to ask Simon. You can share with us how you analyze the Young Contemporary Awards when you become the jury at that time. For me, it's kind of interesting.
But that's nothing to do with writing, right?
Yeah, I know. That's so just some request lah. Yeah. And then how or even how do you start in your latest exhibition, in your curating? Yeah. Because now it's currently the Young Contemporary Award in 2021. So I think it's for me it's good input. I can learn something.
Okay, maybe we can discuss that some other time between us because this is, a session about writing and
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
The young contemporary. So I'm happy to share with you. It's just that I also don't want to bore everyone, especially those who are not so invested in, that, young artist prize. So we can talk about that later. Is that okay?
Sure, Simon. Okay. No
Do
problem.
you have a question about writing though?
Me?
Yeah.
No, so far I still can concentrate. I did for my writing.
Okay. So let's try. Should we try a writing exercise or?
Maybe I don't know, maybe a mixture of writing and exercise, and but I think something like today, like with Denise, for example, I think it's that means if someone has a problem, maybe you tell us. I mean, we can discuss as a group lah. But maybe don't just say what problem. Maybe prepare lah. Like, where are you struggling? Like let's say if it's in the chapters, then maybe come more prepared lah, so that we can discuss more. Because when we see other people's problem, we can also see like we can also see how we gone through it, or how it is also a problem to us, or if it's someone that has overcome that problem, then they can share their experience. Yeah. So we learn by sharing. Maybe that's kind of one part.
I think on the sorry. I think on the Miro there, Simon have an activity on number 6, right? It's about the sticky note one. That one. Maybe we could start with that one also. I mean, it's just a suggestion. Although I just want to make sure I'm looking at the correct article. Is
which one? The one that's
the one you shared? Is it
The dolphin run, right?
sorry. Yeah, we can. Actually,
okay, the dolphin.
but that's actually very short.
Start.
I mean, actually, we should read that together. But why don't we take turns to read paragraphs? Okay. And then we can have a discussion. And
Can?
yeah. Okay. So who wants to start? I assign lah.
The C type tales from the
Clarissa lah. Clarissa start.
Tales from Dolphin by Winnie Wong. Did everyone find the link first?
Where are we? What are we looking?
Okay, number 6.
I put at the chat room. Yeah, Carissa's a put.
Yeah, you click onto number C.
Click on seated tales from the.
These tales are drawn from the fieldwork conducted from 2008 to 2015 in Dafan Village, China, the world's largest production center for hand-painted oil paintings. All of the names, facts, and dates were true at the time of the telling, which in some cases spanned interactions over some months or years. Readers may refer to my book, Van Gogh, On Demand, China and the Ready-Made, for a scholarly account of Dafan Village that strive to put such self-accounts into scholarly, historical, and artistic context. These tales, by contrast, record the stories of artists as they were narrated to me. They demonstrate how the most exceptionalist ideas of art are found anywhere, even in the most unexceptional places.
Okay, Dennis?
I'm still searching for it.
Okay, it's under C, the C tab.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, the tale of a one-way street. Mrs. Chen and Mr. Lee own a little art gallery of their own in Dafan Village. They met in Shenzhen a few years ago when she came to work at an interior design company. He is an art academy graduate from Guangxi province. In many ways, he is her teacher.
Okun?
Okay.
Sorry, you want to go on?
Yeah, I can go on slightly longer. She's learning to paint from him and learning about art. During the day, he goes out to different places to sketch and paint, while she reminds the gallery. It's just a small hallway that runs across the first floor of a building under the stairwell. The walls are cement but whitewashed. The floorboards are polished wood, and they made their own signage out of driftwood. They named their gallery One Way Street many years ago. Here they sell his paintings and drawings in which he explores the mountains and the countryside, the sky. Yeah.
But most customers who come into the store don't understand their prices. They don't understand that these paintings are unique and original, that they come out of a process of his going out to a place, spending time there, sketching, painting, and returning to his studio to create. They don't understand that this painting can be hung at home, but they are also for collecting. Few people understand this. Maybe I can pass on. Sharon?
Sharon?
Hi, is my mic working?
Yes, we can hear you.
So Miss Chen spends most of her days making her own paintings. For a while, she was employing pastel crayons to draw, or more like dot, images on canvas. Some of these works were based on her memories from a village home in Sichuan province. Others are of her daily life with Mr. Lee. She paints their cat and their potted plants, the meal she cooked him the night before, the leftover beer bottles after he drinks with his friends. She paints him leaving the village in the morning to go out to sketch. She created a large series of these works, but she didn't really sell any because she doesn't care about selling. She's just a student still, and her teacher is him. They don't really care about money or what goes on in Daphne Village because they only need each other.
Bushra?
Yeah. Okay. So one evening, one of their friends came by to give them a gift. It was a book it found in one of the used bookstalls. It was called One Way Street and had some writings by a German philosopher. Their friend thought that since their gallery had the same name as the book, they might like it. So she read it in her spare time. It was interesting enough, but she doesn't really read anyways. She just wants to paint.
Okay. Ellie?
Ali can't read. He said his line is bad.
Oh, okay. Ellie?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So that's it, right?
Sorry, phone, sorry.
Or we're reading all the way. How many stories?
Ellie?
Sorry, does it continue to the tale of Speedy Lie?
Yes, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. C.W. Lai, overseas Chinese, was born in 1937 in Indonesia. When he was 16, he told his father that he wanted to return to the motherland to join Chairman Mao's revolution to help in constructing the great socialist society of the new China. So he returned to his ancestral home in Guangdong province, Mizhou village. He was one of Chairman Mao's overseas returning youth. Mao sent for them in ships, but put them in special schools. It was glorious to be part of the revolution. Lai took the examination for the Guangzhou Art Academy, but he was only put on the waiting list. That year, there was a fire in his village. He ran into the burning building to save the people in it. He was called a hero in the newspaper, but his father in Indonesia heard about this and was so mad. He sent word that his son was to go to university right away.
Iqbal?
So in 1958, Lai went to Wuhan Institute of Physical Education. He became a sprinter. He was really good at running, really fast. Afterwards, he stayed at the institute and worked as the track and field professor. He taught there for 9 years, even during the Cultural Revolution. In 1972, he smuggled his way into Hong Kong. Should I just continue the next
You want, like, what do you prefer? We can also pass on to the next person.
Okay, yeah, Postgrad.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's full circle. In the 1970s, there were painters everywhere in Hong Kong. Practically every street and alley of Tsim Sha Tsui had paintings for sale. He finally went back to painting, which was what he'd wanted to do all his life. He opened a gallery in Causeway Bay called Riviera Gallery. It was in the Riviera building next to the Excelsior Hotel, which is still there.
Was it Dennis?
Yeah.
I forgot.
He first saw paintings painted entirely with a palette knife being done by a Vietnamese painter. So you could say that that man was his teacher. The other painter who painted like that used to work in front of the Hilton Hotel. Anyways, by watching them, he went home to make his own paintings with entirely new compositions. Of course, back then, everyone painted fishing villages, the Hong Kong port, Pedder Street, junk boats, and so on.
Cool.
But his own style was entirely new and different. He was the first to paint with a palette knife on canvas, and later he painted painting entirely in blue, then in red. Only many years later did he hear that Picasso also had a blue period and a rose period. Once there was a dealer who offered him 300 Hong Kong dollar for each junk book painting, but only if he would paint 5,000 paintings in a year. Lai declined. If it was 2,000 painting or so over 3 years, then he have been willing.
By the 1980s, there was too much competition from the painters in the mainland. By then, the price for a small 6x8-inch painting was only 3 Hong Kong dollars. Many people moved back to the mainland, or they just changed jobs. Some of his friends switched to house painting. It's even easier, they said. No thinking required. So they painted the walls instead of the paintings that hung on them.
So in 1993, okay, am I on? Yeah. In 1993, he closed his gallery and went to Australia at the invitation of a magician who became his manager. This was Peter J. Shield, who ran something called the World of Unexplained Mysteries. For 2 years, Lai gave live demonstrations of his painting technique and sold thousands of paintings. The Gold Coast Bulletin even wrote an article about him. Speedy Lai lives sharpest stunt. It described his 8-minute masterpieces. Yes, over time, Lai had developed a technique that would allow him to paint a painting of a junk boat in the Hong Kong harbor in under 10 minutes. When painted on black velvet, he could do it in 5 minutes because you don't need to clean the background. He painted entirely with a palette knife, and his Chinese nickname was One Knife Lai. Lai estimates that at this point in his life, he's painted about 6,500 junk boat paintings.
Lai moved to Dufferin Village in 1999. Before moving there, he talked with a lot of the painters. He decided that whatever their conditions, at least they had hope.
On the weekends, fans can find Speedy Lai painting at the Tsim Sha Tsui Harbour Walk in Hong Kong, where artists have to be approved by the cultural center managers to display their work to the public on the sidewalk. Those managers are horrible though. They have made up all sorts of rules to get rid of artists like him. First, the artists had to pay, then they could only show 3 of the same paintings at once. Then it was only 1 of each painting. Now they aren't even allowed to sell them, just demonstrate.
One day, just one of his paintings will be worth more than a building. That is a fact. There's nothing anyone can do about that. It is a fact. It's a fact of history. Value accrues with time. His paintings already exist all around the world. They are already world famous.
Should we go on? Dennis, is it?
Yeah.
Last. Sorry.
Command was born in 1980 in the city of
It
Xi'an.
means it's very soft.
Can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, I think you're using your laptop mic or whatnot. Nope. You can try figure it out. I can read this next paragraph first. The tale of the self-portraitist. Xiao Kuman was born in 1980 in the city of Xi'an. He attended the normal university of his home province, where he placed in advertising, but he had always wanted to be an artist instead. Though it was a crazy dream in his senior year, he and several classmates organized themselves into a small group and convinced an art professor to hold painting classes for them. A few months later, the 4 art school graduates embarked for the city of Xiamen. There, they began to work as painters. Xiao soon specialized in figurative painting, a common specialty among university graduates that earned him higher prices for each painting than, say, Impressionism or abstract painting. Dennis, can you speak now? We can't hear you.
Oh.
Okay, I will continue. I can hear you. In 2006, Xiao moved to the famous Dafan village where he began working for Pix 2 Oils, a firm owned by an Australian expatriate named Bailey O'Malley and his Chinese wife, Lita Ray. Like all the companies in Dafan, Pix 2 Oils has a big gallery where they sell painting and they give out painting commission to a small group of painters. They all work and paint at home. Making a living as a painter is not easy, but in Dafan, there are always orders, so many painters. There are a lot of foreign buyers too, and curators and collectors who come around. So there's always a chance to break through here. Sharon?
Sharon?
Yeah, one day in December 2006, the people at Pix2 Oils asked Xiao to come by the gallery. They took a digital photograph of him and asked him to paint it. Xiao agreed, and as usual, Pix2 Oils paid him the usual price. In Xiao's specialty, figurative painting, the price is determined by the size of the painting, the number of human figures in it, and the level of finish required. For this particular painting, a 72 by 72 centimeter single person portrait at standard quality, Xiao was paid about 200 yuan. The painting took one afternoon to paint, a few days to dry, and was delivered on time. Xiao figured the painting was part of an advertising plan to showcase the company's painters.
A year later, a translator he knew, Liu Zhen, called him saying that there was an art historian from America who had seen one of his works and that she wanted to talk to him about it. Xiao likes Liu Zhen. They are from the same hometown, but he figured this would be a prank. It was April Fool's Day after all. There's only 2 chapters.
Okay. Next, Ellie.
They all met up in the plaza of the Dafan Museum of Art, and Liu Zhen's friend brought out a photograph of that self-portrait he had painted a long time ago. He wondered where Liu Zhen and her friend they had found it. She said that the painting is being shown on the internet along with his photograph. She said that on the website, it says the self-portrait was painted for 2 American architects who called themselves Regional Office, who said that when they ordered the painting, it gave him the unique opportunity to express himself creatively for the first time. Apparently, according to these architects, he had been paid a special price that reflected the international nature of his work. Xiao never heard of these clients nor met them, so who knows why they were saying these ridiculous things. Then he remembered again that it was April Fool's Day, so he told Liu Zhen and her friend that the whole thing just sounds like one big joke.
Do you want to, Iqbal? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. Sometime before he met these people, Xiao had painted a self-portrait, just something he had dashed off because he felt like it that day. It's not for sale.
Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you for reading the story. If we go back to the Miro board, what I said is if you have time, use the sticky notes options and share with us your thoughts on the essay. But actually, we can just sort of like discuss about it, right? We don't actually have to sort of like put it on sticky. We don't have to sort of like type it out. So what do you think about the narrative style or form that the author has adopted in writing her research? And I don't know, can you identify or point to specific details or sentence structures or that makes you sort of like, that makes you sort of like think, that makes you sorry, can you identify specific sort of like details or sentence structure that makes you sort of like think so about the narrative style or form? Do you think it was, what do you think it managed to achieve, or what do you think are its limitations?
For me, I really enjoyed it. They always began, Winnie, what was it? She always began with a biographical detail, maybe situating it in a place, in a time, which really helps us draw back into their narratives, into their stories. So I found that to be very helpful.
So what brings you back to a particular sort of like context, help you understand it better?
So whenever the key main protagonist, it's almost like prose, right? The way that she writes. When the main protagonist moves to a different place, she'll always like describe that context and what they were doing there in relationship with art. And also describe what kind of what techniques that they're using when they were creating their artworks.
What about others?
Just want to add on. Actually, Causeway Bay is really existed. I thought it was just a story.
No, it's a place.
Yeah. I thought it's just a story in the Young and Dangerous.
Oh no, it's a place. 尖沙咀 as well.
Okay.
I like the storytelling feels friendly because it's like from third person point of view, and then it feels like you're hearing a gossip a bit, like someone telling you a story like that. And I think in Winnie's first paragraph, last sentence, I put it in the chat room, she said it like, this tale by contrast record the stories of artists as they were narrated to me. So it was intentionally planned that way. And the purpose is like she also wanted to demonstrate how the most exceptionist idea of art can be found anywhere, even the most unexceptional places. So I think that's just set the tone for. I actually didn't realize that until I finished reading, and then I saw the first paragraph. Yeah.
Anyone now?
Can you hear me now?
It's also very I don't know. Is it personal? I mean, it's nice to read. It's really nice, like a personal encounter.
Yeah, or you don't like the approach or the way in which it's narrated? Share.
No, I like that it's a personal encounter. It's like so there's three things, right? There's three artists, three situations, but she wrote the three. I mean, there's commonalities between the three, and she expressed them in a same order or same manner for all three. So it's like looking for the common themes and then write it out for all the three artists.
So you mentioned
nice.
There's a lot of unsaid, right? I mean, except maybe for the opening paragraph, she spells out, okay, she wants to sort of like show how the most exceptionalist ideas are found anywhere, even in most unexceptional sort of places. But over and beyond this, it's almost as if all the research is sort of like, it's not sort of like clearly spelled out yet. It feels like the stories have successfully conveyed that to me. I don't know. She tells the structure of an essay so we know what to expect. Yes, that's, yeah. Do you want to say more about that, Dennis? So why do you think this is important, or maybe something that speaks to you?
If I speak using my mic,
maybe you just have to speak louder, right?
Maybe you try put your face nearer to the keyboard there.
Yeah, I think it's your laptop mic.
Your face nearer, I think. I can hear you typing.
Yeah, same.
let me.
Okay, now okay.
Okay. What should I do? Okay. I think the structure for people who find it hard to follow arguments, like textually. I think if you set the structure of what you're gonna talk about is very helpful for people like me. Yeah. So I think it's this is helpful.
How do you think this can be adapted to how you write?
Wait, I'm thinking.
Or anyone, or
It's actually an introduction of any, the introduction is good now because it gives a structure, right, of your essay, or doesn't matter, thesis, and that's what introduction is all about. Yeah, and you're consistent with the, I think another key thing is consistency with the style and the structure as well. You don't write one topic that's only like different style, another topic different style or something. Yeah. So she applied same.
You mean across the 3 stories, is it?
Okay. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did. Yeah.
What made you say that? Can you point to?
Like how Clarissa was saying, like we should start off with biography. And then it's just how the sequence is actually very structured, but when you read it, doesn't feel structured. I don't know how to say it. Like it feels personal, but it's actually very, very structured.
Each of the paragraphs starts with a date. Like 1980 in 2006 they moved to there, and then later in December 2006 this happened. Yeah,
She has a very, friendly way of structuring it, so it doesn't feel so academic. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So do you think this is
why not? It's nice, right, to read the thesis like this rather than like, I don't know, it's like story. Yeah. I mean, if I were you, I have to read like thousands, not thousands, many theses over the years. I think I'll be bored if everything is so. I would like to read something like this.
Tell me about it.
Something more enlightening. Like easy to read. No need bombastic words. No need like save the world or something. Like just tell me what you think. Your personal.
It reminds
encounter.
me of Jane.
Huh? Sorry?
Come again, Denny?
Yes, we can't hear you. Say it again.
What do you say? Reminds you of something.
Maybe his internet.
Maybe he's frozen again, but we can't tell.
Okay.
another thing I'd like to pinpoint is that a lot of the work that she is writing about is highly descriptive, which is what she set out for, of course. But I know that the majority of us in our thesis would be doing something analytical, perhaps. So I wonder what does it take to bring this to a more analytical lens, through a more analytical methodology of unpacking. Okay, now we know about these 3 stories. Then what? Like, it gives us a vision of how maybe Dafen is a place where people from all over the world would kind of gather, from expatriates to someone from Indonesia of Chinese descent. But yeah, then maybe we are invited to make our own conclusions. But I'm also, what balance do we have to do? Do we have to handhold the audience or the reader to walk through every single little point, or do we hold back a little bit? But yeah. So that tension is interesting to me,
Right. So you see it as a productive tension. It's not something that you couldn't, you found difficult to bridge, as in, like, you could begin with these stories, but then transitioning into perhaps a more analytical discussion on the topic is okay. It's not so challenging. It's not an impossibility for you, right?
I don't think it's an impossibility. I'm just interested to know how that transition is made.
So is that a question? Like,
or I don't think it's a question. It's just more like, this is what I got out of it, like out of this text. Perhaps that's one point that she purposely didn't set out for herself to do. And
bear in mind, this is not an academic essay, right?
Yeah, I know. So for our purpose within our work right now, we still have to add in that part. So I'm wondering what other work we have to do to also spell that out for a reader.
Initially I was sort of like putting it right at the beginning, and I wanted to at least get you to think about this in relation to also the different types of opening strategies, right? So one immediate thing I can think of is you can think of these types of like narrative structures as openings for your thesis. So rather than dive straight into announcing declaring what your topic is, you could lead us to your topic through a story. So there are a number of things that you can do. You can, and I mean, those of you who have done the coursework, you will be familiar that you can always do visual analysis, and that's what we've been emphasizing on. But an alternative to visual analysis is to supply an anecdote or to provide a kind of like list. I've highlighted a few on Miro or do a sort of like comparison. So these are kind of like ways in which you can make your topic much more relatable, because sometimes topics can be quite abstract, especially when it's unfamiliar to the reader. So one way in order to help the readers understand the topic a bit better is to tell the story, and as long as the story is sort of like not just descriptive, but actually has a narrative, right? So it needs to have a kind of twist, or it needs to be compelling enough to drive the reader to want to read some more. Then the story is doing its part in helping the reader to at least understand what is some of the context behind your thesis, so that they're able to understand your thesis a bit better, or at least have an introduction into it. I mean, I
think it's like, I don't know, like, you know, when we think you have to write thesis, we think you have to write in very, how do I say, you follow a certain structure, I don't know, certain rules or something. Because I remember when I was writing for the, what do you call, well, now writing for proposal defense and thesis presentation. The background research, I thought I had to write about, I don't know, but you told me to write my personal encounter of the subject. So I was like, okay. So I just wrote now. So I don't know. I didn't expect that could be
A possible background.
as a possible background research. Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, to be able to write that.
I think, the more kind of like academic texts you read over time, and especially if you read, books or anthologies that are published by university presses, you would soon also sort of like discover that there is really a whole diverse range of, styles that you can actually adopt, a narrative structure that you can actually sort of like play with. You can also be quite playful and experimental with it. But ultimately, it's about your need to sort of like connect it to the main sort of like research problem and research everything. Like, as long as you're able to make that, establish that connection, there are different ways that these can actually sort of like help the reader to understand your topic a bit better, right? Other lecturers are more conservative, so they want you to stick to the conventional format. But I prefer if students actually take this opportunity to also explore different.
We've not read. I've not read that much, but I remember reading the one that struck me, not most but did strike me, was one of Hanafi's writing. Hanafi Hussein, because he was writing for the Bajau. So when he wrote, he was very personal a bit, especially the front part. Of course, the analysis was like, it's talking about the rituals. But he will say like, oh, I started the research because of this. My
very common in anthropology.
Oh, common in anthropology. My inspiration came from blah 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 blah. I was like, hey, that's nice. Yeah, I thought that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, like using the first person perspective to at least make it clear that it's you are speaking from a subjective position, although this is a subjective position that is that you are subjecting to you're sort of like reflecting on this sort of like subjective position is to sort of like use the first person voice, right? So you're also able to sort of like use that. I know sometimes we always ask you to write in third person so that you sound more objective, but honestly, with all humanities, research is already qualitative. So another way of looking at it is, why not be honest about the qualitative nature of your research rather than try to pretend that you can be impartial.
I think that's very compelling, and we should be. I would like to do that, but yeah, we'll see that.
So again, I think what we often forget is research is ultimately persuasive argument, right? So you've got to persuade the reader that what you're saying makes sense, that it is logical, it is system that they can follow your train of thought, that your argument actually they can relate with your argument as well. So how you do that is then you have to figure out what are the strategies that you want to use, whether it's to use stories, use narrative, use visual analysis, use different sort of like strategies or literary devices to help the reader to see it from your perspective, right? Of course, the main thing is that you have to make sure that that perspective is solid, grounded. You've done your research, but spending some time perfecting the craft of learning how to communicate your research is also, I think, an important component of writing a thesis. And learning how to be comfortable with words, because I don't know, I mean, I'm never comfortable with words. If I don't write for a few days, like I haven't written for, I don't know, 1 month now. I just lose it, right? I mean, I don't, it'll take me a few weeks to get back the rhythm.
Exactly.
It's very hard. It's not natural. For me, at least. I don't know about you guys. Maybe for some people it comes naturally, but for me it takes a long time for it to come back. But once it comes back, then it flows naturally until I'm lazy and slack off, and then I have to train myself again.
Paham.
Right, share.
I think for me, I always I started to create like almost like a Pinterest board of words that I can use for terms.
Okay. Can you
So
share? I don't know. Do you want to share your Pinterest board?
No, I don't have a Pinterest board. I mean, like it's just like in my notebook. I don't have it right now, but like for other words, for words like what was that word that I was using? For like different keywords that I would be using a lot in this particular essay, then I create different words that I feel would match with the tone that I want to show. Because I've been like talking a lot about ecologies, so I'll be using the word cultivated rather than like and grow, rather than like to make and to I don't know, other more different kind of tone. So to kind of figure out which tone I'd like to use for a particular essay or maybe an article that I'm writing, then I create like a Pinterest boards of like verbs that I'll be thinking about a lot or using a lot, or adjectives. And I can just pick from it if I've been using this one too much, and okay, I need to find another one.
So how do you find equivalent? Like you use a thesaurus or?
Yeah, I use a thesaurus, or I read articles of similar tone that I'm thinking about, and then like pull the language.
Okay.
And put it, but then it's quite new technique that I've been thinking about. It's quite useful. But yeah.
Anyone have any thoughts? So you're doing script writing now. Sorry, Okui, right? You want?
Actually, just now I was also PM Sharon. Sharon actually is also in the documentary scene. Can I say that actually it's very similar with documentary a bit. Maybe I can share screen very quickly.
Yeah.
Because yesterday I was doing some workshop with my team. Actually, just now when you guys mentioned about finding the problem statement. So for me, it's like this. I immediately thought of this slide. It's something like when I was looking through, maybe hearing from Denise and Carissa and also Yusra, it's like maybe something like this also. And then maybe here the conflict and tension perhaps is like where our problem statement comes in as well. And then in the end, like our kesimpulan like that in the end. So I mean, this is, which I find it quite interesting. It's just how we tell a story in the thesis lah. Yeah, this is just the add-on point. And then I think earlier on, someone also mentioned about how to relate the events or the details in the thesis with the overall thesis statement. It reminds me of this as well, because this is a part I'm also struggling with, how to link my plot and events with the larger theme that I'm trying to bring out in the documentary. This slide was actually from I went on like a course about how to do about the history of documentary, and I find it quite useful. Yeah. I'm just wondering for you guys, like whether like you have that arc. Yeah, it's like in documentary making, actually they say that the challenge is actually to find and the arc of the documentary, because I think documentary is also usually like you don't create you must make it natural, but although sometimes the scriptwriter like already plan the tension or climax, so it's like finding the arc in it. So I was just wondering that whether it's something in our thesis writing as well. I mean, for you guys that is writing right now. It sounds like a problem statement. Yeah, it sounds like problem statement to me. Yeah, how you build everything towards there and then convince people. Yeah. Yeah, Ali, yeah, add on.
No, I agree with you. Like documentary has that element of finding that story, and that's why I feel like while I'm writing now, it was easier for me to just like what Yusra said, be personal about it, talk from where you are at, and then from there, then I look at the other studies that resonates with my experience. So then it indirectly curates my resources more than let the resources overwhelm me. Yeah. So I think documentary and storytelling is really useful to build. I think because I'm also struggling to make that story happen. And you don't want to presuppose your result. You want to narrate it. You want to bring your sample, give justice to your sample. You don't want to tarnish them with what you think already.
So anyone wants to add? Anyone else has anything to add? Or I guess we are also a bit tired already.
Yeah.
2.5 hours. So how can we move? What do you think would be helpful in moving forward?
I felt like the reading part was very useful because then I get an idea of how everybody sort of feel in terms of how they write. If we could read some more, another article maybe, from a different field, if that's possible lah. Kalau jauh sangat tak payah.
What do you mean different field?
Like I'm also looking at how COVID impacted sports.
Okay.
To talk about arts or frame a way to talk about it too. And also it's under a COVID study, so it's also part of my literature review. But that expands my understanding of, because I'm looking at groups, but sports looks at individual sportsmen. So I'm also looking how they analyze and the tools they use lah. Yeah, I felt like maybe if we had other sort of field would be useful.
Okay, we can definitely do that. Well, why don't we do two things? We can have you, maybe, do you want us to read that article, the one about sort of like COVID and sports? And I was thinking maybe since you are closest to anthropology, you can pick something from anthropology. And we can then examine how participant observation and ethnography is being written or narrated in a text. Then we can have at least two texts to compare. One looking at sort of like sports and COVID, and perhaps something more topical, and something that is more sociological, and the other one anthropological, where then you have two very different and distinct kind of like narrative structure. Is that okay? Both of you pick one text that we can at least
Boleh.
Okay. So maybe in 2 weeks time when we meet again, then we can actually go through that. We can use our next session to discuss these texts, and then go into
Simon?
Yeah.
Can you share a bit more about what you shared on the WhatsApp group about this digital art history exploration and study group?
Basically, well, this is something that I think skills that I've been trying to pick up over the summer month, or during the sort of like during the semester break. And there are a few sort of like courses I want to sort of like test run and see if I'm able to adapt them perhaps for a future course in digital sort of art history. But I'm there are some students who have expressed sort of like interest in, also exploring some of these methods. They're not all from sort of like UM, just like people from all over the place, mostly from UM. And so what we're gonna try to do is to meet up, have a discussion, try to design a short curriculum of things that we want to learn, platforms that we want to learn, programs or sort of like tools we want to learn how to use, and then sort of like run at least weekly workshops where we try to work through these modules, so that we are able to gain skills in like, how do you sort of like think about, GIS mapping, at least the basics of it. How do we then sort of like think of topic modeling, text mining, and actually sort of like doing exercises that are already available online, and we're going to sort of like do those exercises, troubleshoot it together if we encounter any difficulties or challenges, and then help each other to at least gain some basic understanding of these different tools that are relevant to our history. So primarily they have to do with stuff that is about mapping, spatial, network analysis, topic modeling, building archival inventories, and those kinds of stuff. It's roughly around those few areas.
How long are you planning to run this? Until September, is it?
Until, maybe until September, until middle of September. So a large part of it, I think, will involve us playing around with data visualization as well. So trying to, so as students, I think you can sign up on Tableau for free. As a university student, you can sort of like get Tableau for free. So I would recommend those who wants to, do this together to get a Tableau account. We can actually learn how to use Tableau properly. Like you figuring out how to sort of like, use open refine to clean up data sets and, spreadsheets and all the boring stuff. But hopefully it'll, we'll become better at those as well. Because I kind of feel like these are things that you need to sort of like motivate each other to sort of learn. I mean, I've hit a bit of a roadblock, and I guess I'm looking for company.
Main reason. Sounds perfect. Tableau. Okay. Can we join halfway through? Because unfortunately, in the weekends, I'll be busy.
No, it won't be in the weekends.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's just the first meeting.
Okay.
Let us know when it is. We'll definitely be interested. Thank you.
So, I mean, the last thing maybe I wanted to ask Okwe is that, that graph that you've shown about the narrative structure or the narrative flow. I know like people in sort of like filmmaking have been exploring, say, like more, say, Eastern type of narrative structure, right? So like instead of using that kind of like structure, they tend to, like, for example, the Chinese one where it's the qi cheng what 转合. Have you heard of it before? It's like,
no, actually, I will explore it. Qi Chen. Oh, okay.
So it's something like, I'm gonna type it out. So roughly means like you raise something, or something is raised and then you sustain it, but then you introduce entirely a twist in the middle, which is not the climax, but an entirely different thing. But then you try to sort of like synthesize that as a conclusion. So it's a different kind of like narrative structure, and I wonder if narrative structure needs. Are there sort of like more experimental ways we can sort of also think about narrative structure these days? rather
Yeah.
than, because that model is primarily very modern,
It's quite old also, that model. Yeah.
very modern, very standard lah.
Mm.
And I wonder
Also,
if you thought of this or these other kind of like narrative structure.
I'm also trying to explore as well. I'm quite new with it as well. Try to break the structure actually, while attending to my funder. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, the structure, because how to tell a story while trying different structure. I think it is definitely a lot of work how to break that one. Yeah.
Lukman will be
You will break me
that.
first. No.
Lukman will be expert in that.
Yeah. Actually, I should ask him.
Right. So I guess sorry. The Tableau visualization account used extensively for financial report. We could too. What do you mean by that? Power or Power BI?
No, I know because my husband's an accountant, but he's of older generation, so he handles his stuff. All his staff know how to use Tableau, Power BI, and they use it extensively for their financial report.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But they use Power BI, I think, not Tableau, because the Power BI is under Microsoft. So they are on Microsoft platform. They use Microsoft Teams, everything Microsoft lah. So they use my BI, and then so their Excel is like Excel all automatic come up with like all these visualizations.
Yeah.
Excel spreads. Yeah.
Right. So we're gonna explore that a bit of that and see how far we can sort of like go with that and how it connects to the kind of research that we do, right? Also, it's an opportunity to sort of like link these tools back to our individual research projects as well. If you're interested, otherwise, go ahead.
I think it's something what we did in the last semester's course.
Yeah.
So that's when I knew all of
each semester I'm like pushing the notch a bit.
Because I was asking my husband, hey, you know how to use this? This is like, I don't know. His staff knows.
So I'll see everyone in 2 weeks time. In the meantime, I will try to get the text from Yusra and Ali. Or if you're ready, just share the text in the group and I'll consolidate it and make sure I'll share it again with everyone before our next meeting in 2 weeks time. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Terima kasih semua. Assalamualaikum.
Bye.
Bye.
Waalaikumsalam. Simon? Simon? I ada email kat you yang I punya tu. So later you check and then give comments lah.
ASAP. Okay.
It's okay. Just take your time.
Okay.
Can you share? Boleh tak share sikit macam mana you